and thank you for being here today. Only 10 minutes, you get a 7-minute nod, and if you want to leave some time for questions, your choice. If you don't, but
well, that's good. Thank you.
It's yours.
So just quickly, I'm chairman of the Waihini River Committee, and we had a meeting last night, so it's even more important that this has got right, because GWRC are proposing a 41.7% rate increase for the river component of everyone's rate in the Waihini. So we said, "Ooh, hang on, we're not." So a little bit of argy-bargy. Lucky Adrian was there, and she said, "Well, I don't know anything about this." So because officers were saying it's baked in and you can't change it, and she said, "Well, no, we haven't seen it yet." So something's going on there. So I just wrote a few quick notes so that water done well here in key points. So I've just got here, and you would have read it in my submission: fair, measured, fit for purpose, cost effective, and efficient. So we've got to be get ourselves into the right place and be doing the right things, reflective of the community and affordable. So, and I guess the reason I mentioned about that Waihini thing is it's Wellington again dictating what's going on, and the bloody cost just goes through the roof. And then there's all code of practice and monitoring it. It just becomes unmanageable. The costs fly through the roof. Benefit cost means nothing, and they don't understand any of that. So we've had enough. What I would like to see, and I like CDC's model, and you should have seen that in my submission, that you have a small team focused on doing the shitty little jobs around town. There's a little bit of a water leak here and there. Just go next door and say, "Fred, go and fix that," and it all happens. Job done. And then if you need really big jobs, then you get a contractor to do that, and that's it. So you haven't baked in costs or structures like Wellington Water had or anything like that, and I really like that, and so somehow or other that needs to get captured, I think. Very strong process for board selection, ability to easily remove non-performers. So I guess you read Wayne Brown, he's not going to have a dump like Wellington telling him what to do or how to do it, and he's had to have a sort out at their transport body, and I think their water process. So whatever it happens, it has to be that the community drives it, the community has control, and it's understood, and you don't have these people just tearing off and engaging in their pet, whatever it might be. That's not acceptable to me, and I would really fight that. Very strong guideline I follow regarding community expectations and level of service. So I forget, Jeff, when we had that Go Wairarapa meeting, there's a letter or something you give to the board. For that letter, I think it's got to be really detailed and nail everything down and have a really strong choker chain in it. That's it. You pull things up before they get out of hand, and it should be easy to manage that. Minimum standard, e.g. for water, like again, Carterton, you went out and you leak tested your network, you leak tested the laterals, you did repairs, you then had a water model, you put in some pressure reducing valves, and Johannes will know all of this stuff or will have picked it up. And then you've had water meters for yonks, and you're using them, and you know about the charging, and you know they're not discriminatory at the whole thing. And so it needs to be a minimum standard. If harmonisation or whatever it is, everyone has to be doing the same thing. Need to not only harmonise the 10-year plan, but also to harmonise or optimise the contents of the 10-year plans to ensure all functions are identified and compared, if necessary, using some form of weighted average or other mechanism. Need to ensure always comparing apples with apples. So it's okay that all of this funding has been, because you only know everyone else's 10-year plan, you don't know anything else, but you don't know how that's structured compared to how or the others are structured compared to how yours are. So who knows what that matrix will look like? So there needs to be something to sort that out. And I guess we used the example last night. So for the rating for the Waihini scheme, that used to be that the rural paid 75% and the urban paid 25%, but the value was the opposite of that. So a number of years ago, they said, well, shit, we can't swing it all over. So they went 50-50. And so the rural obviously were happy because they got a bit of a cut and the urban went up a bit. But and that's the mix that's used now. So I'm not saying that this will be a 50-50, but what I'm suggesting that this stuff got out of alignment and we don't know what the alignment of the other 10-year plans are. So there needs to be a bit of an analysis on that, and you need to sort of work your way through it. So there's a bit of a matrix used to bring in what you've got in yours now, what they've got in theirs, but what the big picture says, what that standard specification of the works that you really need to be doing says, so that you can mix that whole batch up. But I don't see it as overly difficult, but it need to happen. Must be designed such that can move as easily as possible to a unitary authority. So I'm even more convinced that you really, however this is structured now, it has to be structured that it will be a unitary authority, because like quoting Jeff, so about 40% of your money or work or stuff is tied up in Three Waters, so when that goes to this new body, you only everyone's 60% roughly, but how will you know that the Three Waters is being done well? You'll have a committee on there now. Wellington Water, I know the model's different, but Wellington Water has a board and it has a committee, and it's worse than shambles. So we have to make sure that it doesn't happen here. So I think that the structure's got to be that, yeah, we just move to that unitary, because the economics and the sort of gravity of the work and the whole thing, it would become a bit unworkable, because there'll pretty much still be much of the overhead. And if you don't have any of that technical expertise in-house, how are you going to know? You're going to have to be like the others, rely on Wellington Water, the CCO really, for that transition until everyone gets used to this organisation can or is working properly. Then the ratepayers are going to expect this council to know what's going on and to be going. So I think it just tells me that it has to be a unitary authority, and other stuff that I hear coming out of Wellington tells me you don't have one of those, you're dog. So that's all of my quick distillation of those I sent in. So yeah, if there's any questions, I can take that. Thanks.
Any questions from the table or Joel? Joel, thank you, Joel. Francis, pretty clear, pretty clear. Yes.
I just had one question. With regards to your points around the unitary authority, I wonder, what are your thoughts on this Three Waters CCO happening prior to that? I'm just wondering, do you feel that we're putting the course, or are you comfortable with the order that things are moving on?
Well, I think the water stuff, you've got legislation that tells you here's a concrete block wall there, a concrete block wall here, and here's one here that we're pushing in behind you. You have to have that answer by that date, basically. So you're going to have to do that first. The design of this, so now I'm wearing my project manager and engineering designer hat. The design of that has to be such that it can just go step, and you've got it, or the councils have a unitary authority. That body won't be the unitary authority, but the Wairarapa and Taurua councils will be a unitary authority with the CCO reporting to it, and that's it. And that needs, like, the shorter that transition time is, the much happier I would be. And I think because like the other thing is, and that's what I had to remind them last night, shit, people are super hurting with costs, and the cost of living and everything's just gone through the roof. And that's, plonkers don't understand that, and they need to accept it. So this has got a cost, and that came up at the Carterton thing, and I appreciate that. So normally, if you're in business and something has a cost, that cost is it will be some savings somewhere which are bankable, which means you ultimately get to a better space. So it's really important that this thing does bloody work, and it has to work properly, and the cost projections come in that it gets cheaper in the long run, because otherwise, why are you fronting with even more money on what you've already done to date to buy a wrecked horse? That's just ludicrous. So you can't do that. So this has to be structured so that it doesn't gazump you, but you really need to be talking in parallel to get to a unitary authority ASAP, because we really got to get rid of Wellington City Regional Council. You know, you all know anything with Wellington in the name is bloody worse than hopeless. You see that in the paper every day.
Thanks, George. Michael, thanks for your submission. I value your professional opinion, as you know. I'm just curious on your thoughts. How do we have trust in our other neighbours' asset management plans when we're making this decision? I have trust in ours. I have a difficulty trusting what's going to be put forward from our neighbours.
Yeah, well, that's why I've talked about harmonisation of that work. So my reading of all of this is, unfortunately, everyone's got to close their eyes and take a step into the dark hole, and you don't know, and then it might mean that we then have to have a big punch up in an arm wrestle or somewhere to have a sort out, so that because that's something that does concern me. There's too many unknowns, and you've had to do all of this too quick, and everyone's LTP is public, but if you lift the lid, who knows what's underneath? You haven't got a clue. So all of this is on a step of blind faith, which is not something you would normally do, and it's not something I would recommend, but I can't see what the other options are, unless you've got like clearly you're looking over the fence to the south, there must be a bloody Christ, a hell of a mess down there. And then they're trying to dig a trench, or now like they need to put a water pipe across, or renew the water pipe across the Taraniki River. So that was 2.75 million. Well, now apparently they've dropped. So I just was told by a councillor the other day, because he phoned me to get a few comments from me, that it's now down to 2.1 million, because what they're going to do is bury that pipe 4 metres below the bed of the Taraniki River. They were going to do that by digging a trench, putting in a large concrete pipe, backfilling, and then pulling a 300 diameter plastic pipe through it. And there was, supposedly with risk and everything else, 2.75 million. Now they've decided that they'll thrust this outer pipe under the river and then thread this pipe through. So that's how they could save 600,000. They seem to have forgotten they've got pipe laying on the side of somewhere down Popawai Road. South Warwick or Greytown has two sewer pipes, Greytown, running out towards Popawai. They meet up out of the town a little bit. There's a single pipe then runs down out in the paddocks out from Popawai Road until you get to Parr Road. And then there's this, which is all running down the grade of the slope of the land. And then at Parr Road, it runs across the contour to the sewer plant. They've open trench upgraded that pipe because they've got problems. They were going to thrust a dual pipe, a second pipe down parallel with Popawai Road. They tried that a number of times and it failed simply because there were too many large boulders there. So it doesn't work. So they're going to have an open trench there. Upstream in the Taraniki River, those boulders down at Popawai will be tiny compared to what you're going to hit up there. So how they're going to thrust that, I have no idea. I don't know why. They reckon it's more expensive to just loop the pipe and go on the rail bridge, and it's too difficult to deal with Kiwi Rail. And I said, well, you should be able to talk to a minister, and there should be something happen behind the bike shed, and it just bloody happens, and that's it. And, you know, you can't hear all of that rubbish all the time.
And as we know, that any disturbance of riverbeds is a Resource Management Act.
No. So yeah, to answer your questions, I think unfortunately you have to take a giant's leap of faith. So Masterton, their siphon for their water intake, I think is a little bit sort of question mark, but at least they have done some work up there. Their sewer plant has had an upgrade. They, didn't listen to the local people and reworked the land a lot, and then it cost them a bloody fortune to rework the land again so they could get infiltration. So I'm sure there's going to be horrible things, and that's why I've said in there needs to be this double harmonisation. You need to somehow, you're going to harmonise, normalise, or crudely cross-subsidised somewhere out there, but in the meantime, and I think Jeff said, well, maybe that transition time might be 5, 10, 15 years or something to sort of balance it out so it gets to a happy place. And then I think that's the only thing you can do is when it comes together, all of the 10-year plans have to come together. And then you have to do some sort of, I don't know, an agreed audit of what your assets are, and you know what yours are and how they work and where the skeletons are, and they have to front up with the same. And if they don't, I think they need to be embarrassed in public, and that's it. I think it's just going to have to be a few stiff arm tackles put out there and that bit of headbutting.
I think you're right, Michael. I think a lot of this is going to come down to the discussions around the selection of the CE, the selection of the chair, the selection of the board, and people of high level of competency that you won't get in a small standalone CCO, but you've got the chance of getting in a large one. But the letter of intent will need to be very, very clear. And I think I don't see a problem with the suggestions that some submitters are making around harmonisation, because if you consider this as an intergenerational, once in a generation change, the significance of it, you're talking 50, 60, 80 years going on. What's 10 years?
I know.
In that, it's nothing.
Yep.
So why would there be a lot of heartburn over a 10-year phase? We'll get to that discussion.
Yeah. No, but you are right about the CE. And it's just the same as the principal of a school, or that's vital if you stuff that up. So that's why I've said in there, well, you need to be able to garrot people if you have to get rid of them, so that you can.
Was it word garrot? Yeah, garrot.
Yeah, get rid of
You
them.
sneak around behind them with a.
But I don't care how you do it. You need to find
The holders meetings will be interesting.
you need to find a simple way of
Bloody.
making sure you've got, and so I think you just need to be clear that you need to be tough and hard, and that's all there is about it. There's no way around it. Like I've had to sign hot work permits in oil storage terminals where it's live and you're doing hot work. So you've got millions of litres of fuel there, you've got air there. So the fire triangle is flame, air, fuel, and you've got it there, and you're doing hot work there with big grinders and welders and gas torches, and you don't burn the place down, but you need to know what you're doing. And when you sign it, you need to make sure you've asked the right questions and then say, right, now it's go, and that's it. You can do all of that.
Always a pleasure, Michael. Always a pleasure. Thank you for coming along. Thank you for the submissions. Thank you for the clarity and the common sense.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Later. Wish you well in your.
We don't have anyone else.
It's no different to
This. Yeah.
Mr. Noah.
He does.
Sorry.
Yeah, anchors said he can't come anymore. Work commitment. So
Okay. So you scratch, and I'm taking it that Geraldine Oliver is a scratch as well. Okay. So, team, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of our oral submissions. All that remains for us to do now is just to adjourn, and pending the next meeting where we will deliberate on that. But thank you. So we're adjourning. So there is no. I just want to say thank you all very much for participating. The meeting adjourned.